Once our shock absorbers have been trimmed, they bolt easily to our new chassis. The lower shock mount bushing is secured to the shock mount with a 3/8 inch diameter by 2.5 inch long bolt with a flat washer, lock washer, and nut. We securely tighten the nut and repeat the same procedure on the other side. New hardware comes with each new shock. After placing a metal washer and rubber bushing on the upper shaft, we extend it through the mounting hole in the frame bracket. Another new bushing and washer are slipped over the top of the shaft. We thread the new nut on and securely tighten the shock. After repeating this procedure on the other side, installation of the front suspension will be complete. At this point, if we wished, our chassis can be rolled about. We do not modify the front springs until we finish the car. Moving to the rear of our chassis, we will now install the new gas tank that came with our replica assembly kit. After positioning the tank with the front and rear flanges extending over the top of the frame crosspieces, we cut strips of rubber matting to fit underneath the flanges where they contact the frame. This material is used for stairway tread and can be found at most home centers and hardware stores. Our electric drill with a 3/16 inch drill bit is used to drill 3 holes through the front and rear tank flange and top of the frame crosspieces. Our tank is then secured to the frame with 1/4 inch by 3/4 inch long hex washer head self-tapping screws. The correct socket along with an extension and ratchet are used to fully tighten the screws. Our thoroughly inspected motor mounts are now bolted to the brackets on each side of the frame. The open side of the metal retainer faces outward, and a tab at the bottom engages one of the holes in the frame mounts. To secure the stud on each mount to the frame, a thin 10mm jam nut is used, along with an internal star washer. After threading the nut on, we use the necessary box wrench to tighten the mount. A very minor modification must be made to the brake differential valve or proportioning valve. All we really need to do is flatten out the L-shaped bracket. We use our bench vise to partially open the bracket, then we use a hammer to flatten the bracket the rest of the way. Prior to installation, we'll clean the valve in brake fluid. We drill 2 3/8 inch holes through the firewall support brace on the driver's side of the frame and secure the valve with 2 5/16 inch diameter by 1 1/4 inch long bolts with flat washers, lock washers, and nuts. Before the Chevette brake pedal and accelerator can be mounted to our new frame, a few alterations are necessary. After we have removed the plastic retainer plate from the accelerator side of the assembly, we remove the master cylinder spacer from the studs. The entire assembly is then secured in a bench vise. Our China marker is used to draw a line around the protruding oval piece to the left of the brake pedal. A line is also marked on the indented area that divides the bracket. Using a hacksaw, the oval piece is removed. The bracket is then cut into two pieces. We use a file or grinder to smooth the cut areas and remove any sharp edges. The master cylinder spacer is then placed back on the studs and our modified pieces are ready for installation. Our brake pedal assembly is placed against the mounting brackets on the driver's side of the frame. The original Chevette mounting bolts are inserted through the frame brackets and threaded into the holes in the brake pedal assembly. We use the correct socket and ratchet to securely tighten the bolts. A fiberglass battery box comes with the replica assembly kit. Placing it against the frame, we mark the hole locations for the master cylinder studs and a center hole for the master cylinder. We then remove the battery box and use the correct drill bit and hole saw to make the holes. Referring to the instruction manual, we mark and make any other necessary openings. Our electric drill, along with a 3/16" drill bit, is used to drill two holes through the battery box and top of the frame on each side. The battery box is secured to the frame with 1/4 inch by 3/4 inch long hex washer head self-tapping screws. At this point, we want to seal all seams between the frame and battery box. We use Window Weld, a 3M product available at auto supply or automotive paint stores, or we can use a good quality silicone sealer or rubber weather strip material to fill all spaces. With the battery box in place, we can now mount our master cylinder. We slide the master cylinder onto its mounting studs, engaging the hole in the master cylinder push rod with the stud on the brake pedal. When necessary, we replace a questionable master cylinder with a remanufactured unit available from our auto supply store. When it comes to brake parts, we replace any questionable parts without hesitation. The small expense is minor when compared to safety and peace of mind. Also, it was necessary to trim the left side of the mounting foot to clear the frame. The original Chevette nuts are threaded onto the studs and tightened. We bend the lines to the differential valve to conform to their new mounting relationship and tighten them securely. When we stripped our Chevette, we left the metal brake lines attached. We have purchased new brake as well as fuel lines from our local auto supply store, along with the appropriate fittings to connect the lines together. The lines come in various lengths with fittings at each end and can easily be bent by hand. Following the instruction manual, we route our brake and fuel lines. The two front brake lines that come out of the differential valve run along the frame, joining the rubber brake hoses at the frame strut brackets, where we bolt the hose brackets we removed from our Chevette. The rear brake line, along with the fuel feed line and fuel return line, run along the inside of the main frame on the driver's side, where they are secured with metal clamps. Since these clamps were in good condition, they were removed from our original Chevette. If we needed new clamps, we would purchase them from our local GM parts department or auto supply store. The lines run to the rear of the car. The brake line ends at the rear of the frame where it connects to the rubber brake hose from the rear axle. The original Chevette retaining bracket is bolted to the frame at this location. The fuel feed and fuel return lines follow the frame up and then back, and are bent upward just in front of the frame crosspiece at the front of the gas tank. The brake lines are tightly secured to the differential valve. Our rear brake line connects to the front of the valve. Here we have to use the original Chevette fitting to connect the line. Using a tube cutter, the fitting already on the brake line is removed. Then, using a flaring tool, the Chevette fitting is slipped onto the new line. If we wished, we could slip the fitting onto the end and take the line to a service station and have them reflare it. After properly securing all of our brake lines, we move to the back of the chassis where we will attach our fuel lines. We've purchased several feet of both 1/4 inch and 5/16 inch inside diameter rubber fuel hose. While we were at it, we also purchased 4 stainless steel hose clamps of the appropriate size. Earlier, we removed the flare on the metal brake line with a hacksaw and pulled the fitting off. Our rubber fuel hose is cut to the correct lengths. We slide the clamps on the hose and connect the tank fittings to the steel lines, securely tightening the clamps. Since we have decided to use old-style custom gauges in our new TD replica assembly, it is necessary to install a new water temperature and oil pressure sending unit in the engine block. Since we will be removing a few engine components, we keep our shop or service manual handy. The fan, along with the timing belt cover, top pulley, and belts must be removed. Now we have access to the original water temperature sending unit. We unplug and unscrew the original unit. A new water temperature sender, manufactured specifically for the new replica, comes with the gauge set. We simply screw the new unit in place and tighten it. We always use Teflon tape or liquid Teflon sealer on threaded couplings such as these. The original wire is attached to the new unit with the correct electrical connector, and the engine pieces we removed are now reinstalled. A new oil pressure sending unit with a special T-fitting was included with our new gauge set. First, we removed the original Chevette sender, located just to the front of the starter below the intake manifold. To remove it, we use a 1 1/16 inch 6-point deep socket with a ratchet and extension. The original unit must be retained. We thread the heavy steel nipple into one end of the brass fitting.